Hey there, and welcome to the inaugural episode of the Built Not Found show. This show is for those of you who just feel like there's something more for you out there. Those of you who just feel like destiny has a bit more in store for you. I am absolutely obsessed with self-improvement, so if that is something that you are familiar with, then please follow along and hopefully you will start to reach those peaks. So many people, and I was one of these, and I still am from day to day, believe that one day you'll just wake up with this clarity and idea of what you are meant to be doing, and you'll have this magical recipe of how to get there. But unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that. And more often than not, it is just momentum and putting one foot in front of the other that will eventually start to open doors, and that is what generates clarity. And once you hit that point, you start to realize how much control you actually have and how much you can actually manipulate your life to reach your goals. So this episode is going to be a little bit of a backstory on my journey and how I proved for myself that once you start kicking down doors, you get to where you want to be. So we'll roll back the clock to about 20 years ago when I was still a sprightly youngster in high school. And it was at about year 10 that I realized I had no intentions of further study. In hindsight, I think I was always academically minded, but at that time, like most young lads, all I was interested in was footy, girls, and being an absolute clown. And I had no intention of going into uni because I thought, why would I want to spend 5 more years studying? And ironically, I ended up doing that just years down the track. So, long story short, I decided I wanted to be a tradie. I didn't finish year 12 with enough of a score to actually enter uni, but that did not matter to me at the time. I ended up getting into plumbing, absolutely hated it for various reasons. I was always good with my hands and loved doing that kind of stuff, but obviously I just didn't like doing it as a job. So I then ended up labouring with a couple of mates, and that was what I did for about 2 or 3 years, just doing that, playing footy and being an absolute peanut. But I had this feeling that there was something more out there. There's no disrespect to blue collar work. I've been there, I appreciate what those people do, and I don't think it's for people who aren't intelligent. I think most of those jobs you need a level of intelligence to do. So do not get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that lifestyle, but for me, I wanted more. I always wanted to be a physio, but I just thought, well, that's for people who are smart, that's for people who are at uni. There's no way in hell that I can actually get to that point. And that was my mindset at the time, very fixed. How can I get there? There are ways to get into uni, but I can't do that. So what else can I do? So I just floated for a while, and I eventually met my now wife, who at the time was finishing her teaching degree. I would help proofread some of her essays before she submitted them, and then eventually started adding bits and pieces to them, whether it was a sentence or a paragraph. And that led to me eventually just full on writing her essays for her. And at that time, you do whatever you want to get a few extra brownie points in the bank. But they were actually doing quite well. And she said to me, like, you can actually do this. And I realized I could. Like, I had that academic brain. So at that time, the University of South Australia had just commenced this course called Foundation Studies. So it's kind of like an entrance way into university. It's the exact same structure that you would do in any other uni degree, but it's designed to get you used to the idea of how uni works, and the subjects are quite vague and somewhat easy, just to kind of teach you the skills of what it takes to be a uni student. But most importantly, it gives you a grade point average that you can use to apply for various courses. So I did that and did really well. Like, I absolutely hammered it. Not enough to get into physio, but I got into a course called Health Sciences. Through that course, again, I didn't land straight into physio. It took a little bit of dicking around to eventually get into a course called Human Movement. I spent 6 months just grinding, hammering, studying almost every day from 8 till 8 to get a high enough GPA to transfer into physio, which I did. And that was one of the proudest moments of my life. And not just that, but it really started to shatter this whole idea of that fixed mindset. I realized, like, this was a goal that I had held in such high regard, and at a level of just impossibility. And I achieved it. I literally set myself this target and reached it. And it was the first time I'd kind of done something like that. And then I looked back and thought, 6, 7, 8 years ago, I was digging holes, and here I am now in this dream course. And once I was there, I realized, yeah, these people around me are just like me. There are no super geniuses, nothing else like that. And I just thought, for all my life, I just capped myself. And I still do. And I think a lot of us are guilty of that. You hold these fixed thoughts about your talents, and that's what holds us back from doing so many things in life. Hence why I've started this, because it's just something I've always wanted to do, and I've always talked myself out of it. So I thought, stuff it, let's just record something and put it out there. But my main goal with this is to kind of teach everyone else that you can do this kind of stuff if you just put one foot in front of the other. So beyond that, I then finished that course, started to work in the physio fields. I worked in a couple of little clinics, loved it, but again, I thought I don't love everything about working for other people. So I thought, why not start my own clinic? And so that is what I've done for the last 3 years. I took the leap, started my own clinic, and here we are. So again, if someone had told me 10 or 15 years ago that one day I'd be running my own clinic, I'd think they were absolutely on crack. But you can do it. But like I touched on at the start of the show, the main point of this whole chat is, whilst people have goals and whilst people have these aspirations, not everyone always knows what they want to do. I don't even know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years, but I think that's the beauty of life. I think rather than thinking I need clarity and direction before I start, I think if you have a loose goal, which for me, that was getting to physio, and then start putting one foot in front of the other, you then develop this framework and some momentum, and then you can start to kind of charge towards that goal. I think by creating action and creating momentum, that you then build clarity. And once you've done that, it's a magic mix. There's no other secret formulas to it. You can sit there and plot and plan and meditate and dream and try and manifest all these things, which can obviously all help. But until you actually just start putting one foot in front of the other, you get nowhere. And once you start knocking down doors and once you start pulling levers, you start to realize how much control you have over life. You start to realize that life is like a game. You can almost set any goal you want. And this is not to sound cliche, but you can really start to understand once you go through these processes what people mean when you say, set a goal and anything is achievable. And it's true. You just have to make those goals achievable. You have to just keep on doing that process over and over again. Like for me, it was just get into uni. And once I did that, it was get into a certain course and then get into physio. And once I got into physio, it was start my own clinic. And once you start to do that over and over and over again, you just rinse and repeat, and you set a bigger, more audacious goal each time and apply the exact same formula. And that is how you get stuff done. So if you're in that similar spot where you're believing that there is more out there for you, or you have this outrageous goal that you do think is impossible, I'm telling you now, it really is achievable. You just have to actually start taking action. Even if it's not in the exact right direction, you'll figure that out once you start putting forward those steps. I think for me, like so many people don't know what they want to do, or they've never been to uni before, they might enroll in uni and just start trying different courses, then end up realizing what they want to do through trial and error. But by taking those little baby steps and creating action, you do better than just sitting on the couch every night going, shit, I hate this. I'm not going anywhere, but this is what life is right now. So if you've made it this far, I hope you've taken a little lesson away. I really appreciate you listening, and I hope that you like and subscribe to follow more and more to come. Because this podcast is going to be like everything else I've done. I want to make it an actual thing. So thank you, and I will see you next time.